Welcome to Crushgasm, the podcast dedicated to the highs and lows of crushes. From their first to their worst, we're going to cover them all with a cascade of characters, including our guest today, a sleep enthusiast, Whitney Knox Lee, a strong Black mother, wife, and podcaster who's all about following her passions, who's here to talk not only about her show, the Impostrix Podcast, but also her elementary school crush that set the foundation for her crushes to come. But before we get into all of that, Whitney, how are you?
I'm good. I'm over here laughing about this intro because it's all true. But I'm good. I went to Costco today for the first time in my adult life, and it is better than I remember.
Wow! Did you get any samples?
Yes. They had like a like natural caffeine energy drink situation, and so this is one of the reasons why it's better. Because when I was growing up, it was like they would give you a little itty bitty cup of something and like hope you buy it. This dude, he gave me a little cup, drank it. I liked it. He was like, "Do you want a bottle to walk around?" And I was like, "Oh, bottle?" And he's like, "Yeah, we have a cooler here of water." And it's one of those like where it's powder that you put into the water bottle. Oh. So then he gave me like a whole tube to walk around. And I didn't wind up buying it today, but I will. Like, the reason I didn't buy it is because I bought everything else. Oh. And I had to say no somewhere.
There is a line you have to draw at Costco. That's like, oh, they gave you a whole bottle, man.
Yeah, and they also had like mini packs of like some detergents that like obviously you're not gonna wash anything like right that second. So like I like this idea of like, no, you can actually try it. And then next time you come, buy it type of thing. So I was impressed. I got some stuff that I hadn't tried before. So some new stuff, some prepared foods. Yeah, I love Costco. Love Costco. But it's not near my house. So for the past like 4 years since I've had a family and Costco makes sense, like I've been like, no, I'm not going to Costco because I have to drive a full 20 minutes to get there. I regret that decision, and yeah, I'm firmly on Costco. I got my hot dog, I got my churro, my kids got pizza. So yeah,
it's an experience. It is lovely. I love Costco. My only complaint with our local Costco is the samples don't be sampling on the weekends when we can go. They mostly do it during the week is when we have the hot sample, like the good ones. And then by the weekend out here, even where I lived in Virginia, they just are not and I'm like, I become a Karen. I'm like, who's the manager? Because
I came here for lunch.
Yeah, honestly, when I lived in California, we used to jog to the Costco, walk around and eat, and then jog home. It was like it was our lunch. So I love Costco. And now I'm getting older. I totally relate to all those TikTok videos about millennials shopping there for clothes. I have so many good jeans from there.
Yes, sweats. I'm so proud of myself because I didn't buy a single item of clothing. I didn't buy any socks. I didn't buy any books. I didn't buy any of the things. I just bought groceries and toilet paper. And but I love getting my like loungewear, like some sweats and stuff. Sometimes I get jeans at the other place. I'm not going to mention the other place that we shopped that was similar to Costco, but not. So
yeah, I love there.
They should give you some affiliate funding for this.
Shout out Jessica Simpson jeans.
I saw they're on sale right now.
Yeah, they're so because me and my friends, we grew up very emo and we're like stuck with our skinny jeans and they're slowly leaving stores. So every time I find them, I will report back to the friend group like Costco skinny jeans. I found some good Kirkland skinnies and I'm like, I love rock my Kirklands.
Yeah, I don't know if the ones that are on sale right now are the skinny jeans, but I saw in the little brochure as I was getting my membership card that they've got Jessica Simpson jeans on sale right now.
They're wonderful. They're a gift. They fit really good. They're high rise, which we love. Don't want the low rise to come back. No. We lived through that. It's a nightmare. It's like our Great Depression for millennials.
Well, and now that we're like adults,
I shouldn't have been wearing them as a teen. there like I was a big child. So, but again, before we get into the crush and all that, can you tell us where we can find you and Impostrix online?
Yes. So www.impostrixpodcast.com is the website. I mostly hang out on Instagram and on LinkedIn. So for Instagram, it's Impostrix Podcast. On LinkedIn, it's just my name, Whitney Knox Lee. You can search me. In 2024, though, I plan on increasing my video presence. So I do have a YouTube channel right now, and that's going to get more active as the year moves forward. And so that's also just Impostrix Podcast, and same with TikTok. That's my name, Whitney Knox Lee. But all of that information is on my website.
So let's get to this crush, Kenny. Which was the name of my first crush when I was little. So I was he wasn't
the Kenny Club.
I know, he wasn't just your elementary school crush. He was your first crush. But when you say that, are we just missing any like celebrities or cartoon characters up until that point? Because Kenny entered the game around second grade. So was no one from TV or movies like interesting?
Not that I can recall.
No cartoons? No. I mean, for women of our age, Robin Hood from Disney comes up a lot.
Nope.
Now you weren't into the Fox.
Nope, I definitely was not. I'm trying to think if that was before or after Mulan, because I really liked basically everybody in Mulan. But I think it was before Mulan. And Lion King, with the Morgan Freeman voice. Really liked the dad, Mufasa. But no.
Interesting, Mufasa. Usually Scar gets a lot of
love. No. Absolutely
dark
not.
hair. I know he's a murderer.
Speaking of Scar, I was terrified of the Beast in Beauty and the Beast. I'm sure people had a crush on the Beast. I was terrified of the Beast.
I believe my third episode, Demanda Martini, a drag artist out in DC area. Beast was the crush we talked about. Also, my mom loved the Beast as Beast, and we all agree when he turns human. What the? They definitely messed up the animation when he turned human. I don't get Beast, but I see when he turns human being upset because he did look weird.
Yeah. No, I just remember being terrified. I couldn't make it through that movie the first time that I saw it. But yeah, no, truly, Kenny is who I remember being the first person that I was like, oh, so this is what that is. This is what this crush situation is.
I was going to say, at that age, if you haven't, when we first have a crush, it's how do we know? This is something new. So for you, thinking back, what made you realize with Kenny, oh, this is a new feeling?
The urge to be mean to him and be nice at the same time. So my son is in kindergarten, and he's got 4 girls in his class pushing him, and not pushing, but he calls it bullying. But what it is just kind of poking fun. Mm-hmm. So maybe it is bullying. But I'm trying to talk to him about they probably just like you, boo. They shouldn't do that. You're right. You can say no. You can say stop. You can say all these things. But just so you know, it's because you're the shit. Not that language. But so with Kenny, though, it was similar. I was very competitive. I was very athletic. I was a tomboy. And so most of my friends were boys. So it was not uncommon for me to have boys who were friends who I was hanging out with and all that stuff. But with Kenny, I wanted the attention. I got little heart flutters, and my competitiveness was a different level. If I would lose, then I would get much more upset than if I would lose to somebody else. And yeah, I thought a lot about him.
And what I do love about elementary school crushes is that they aren't just like the most innocent ones that we have in life, but I also think in many ways they're our most simple because, like, a lot of times, if you just want to take a psychological approach, crushes at that age are really proximity based. They're just who we're around the most until we get older and start to realize personality traits and all that. But other than being cute and giving you the flutters, what did you first notice about Kenny that made him better than all the other boys you might have been friends with or in class with?
I mean, he was cool? Cuter. That's really it. Like, he was nice. He was funny. I remember liking his smile. I remember liking like his complexion. His complexion was really similar to mine, but it felt really like smooth, chocolatey. I don't know, like, because there were other people, and there were other people that were cute. There was this guy, Andre, super cute. Maybe cuter than Kenny, but for some reason, like, I didn't really have that. Like, it wasn't like that with Andre.
he was cute, but he didn't have that X factor.
Yeah.
I feel you that, because my elementary school crush, for me, it was because he didn't like all the other boys, like these few girls, and they would always fawn over them. But my crush, he was like, didn't care about them, and he was like nice to me, and we would always mess around. But I was like, he didn't like me, I don't think, but I just liked the fact that he didn't like the popular girls. I was like, that's cool.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't give them the time of day, which is what they want. He didn't give it to him. But for Kenny, you mentioned he was like your best friend, and did that connection as friends like help fuel the crush?
It's possible. I mean, I really can't remember what came first, if it was the crush or the friendship. I remember that he was new to the school. Like, I had been at the school since kindergarten, and I believe he came in second grade. And we became friends. Like, I'm sure because he was new that, you know, he caught my eye. But like I said, I was also a tomboy, so I wasn't just friends with him. I was friends with all of the boys. And I think through like the play on the playground, him and I became friends, and probably me crushing on him had a little to do with us being closer than the rest of the boys. But he was also my only platonic crush, like, in my life. I mean, I don't say platonic as like I was attracted to him non-platonically, but he was the only crush in my life that, like, there was never a kiss, there was never anything. It was just me crushing on him through 5th grade, and then he moved. Was it in 5th grade or maybe later? He moved from Seattle to another city. I don't even know where.
Moved. That's why it had to have ended. But like, being his friend and being a tomboy, I also grew up a tomboy. I had male friends, so they always felt comfortable telling me when they did like other girls, and it was kind of like, okay, just, it didn't bother me because I didn't like any of them. But as his friend, did he ever do that, like tell you, oh, I like Jessica, or like blah blah blah?
No, but there was another girl I remember who didn't like me because of how close I was to Kenny. I don't know if he actually liked her though. But I remember getting the side eye, and that's something, you know, as tomboys, we get that throughout life.
Yeah.
Because we're always the friend of the dude who's, you know, who girls are attracted to, and we're viewed as the competition when really we're just one of the guys. And so that was the first time that had happened to me though, where, like, matter of fact, actually, as I'm looking back on it, so there was one girl who, like, made it clear that she didn't like me because I was friends with Kenny, but there was another girl, her name was Rachel. Her and I actually got into an elementary school fight. And I never knew what her problem was. But it could very possibly have been that I was close to any of the guys, you know, maybe Kenny, maybe somebody else, and that she was jealous.
Sounds like it, because when you are a tomboy and you get that in with the boys, the other girls don't quite understand it, because they're not looking at you as like competition in, I think, the looks way, but they are like, dang, what has she got over me that she can get close to him? I totally understand that. But on the flip side, as a tomboy, we often get stuck in that kind of friend zone position. So have you like experienced that throughout your life?
No, Because I've always been pretty forward with my attraction after Kenny. Like maybe I learned my lesson from Kenny. This is like a therapy session right now because and you said like it set the foundation for all my other crushes. I think I learned a lot at that young tender age.
Like 8.
Yeah, right. I am somebody that likes attention, and I'm fairly, outgoing. I'm an extrovert, and so when it would come up that someone was attracted to me, I'd go find out what's up. And I can't remember there being times where I had a crush that like was not going to be available to me because I was like friend zoned. Usually, I mean, okay, well, let's be honest. I was a great athlete. And so I was popular, like athlete popular, which sounds gross coming off my tongue. But so if other people, I dated other athletes at times, or I dated, like it kind of felt like there weren't people who were off limits. Oh, that sounds so awful.
I get it. I mean, especially for a certain time in life, athletes were the end all be all of cool in school settings. Now it's kind of changed to where I don't know what's cool nowadays. You can be anything and be cool. They definitely got rid of the John Hughes model in schools now. Definitely these Gen X or Gen Z just flip the script on all of us. We got to relearn what's cool.
Yeah.
But wait, so you mentioned Kenny, the crush didn't stop because it kind of, you just fell out of it, but he moved. So were you kind of heartbroken? Were you like, did you know he was going to move, or did you show up that first day of school and be like, where the is he?
No. He told me because we were friends. So I was expecting it. It was sad. And I remember in 5th grade, I think it was 5th, could have been 4th grade, but we had a science project and he was my science partner, and we were creating the task was to create some kind of like game using electricity. We were learning about electricity. And so he came over. I thought I might kiss him when he came over. But I didn't. It was just like strictly we're working on this thing. And I remember being disappointed. And that's kind of where my memories with around Kenny end. So I'm going to imagine that he moved shortly thereafter.
And like, when Kenny's gone, did anyone like instantly replace him, or did it take a second for a new crush? Because for me, it was like my crushes for elementary are contained there. And then I went on to middle school. I had a crush for 3 years in middle, and then high school, there were more people. So I was like dipping in a few people, but like I had significant ones for those two.
Yeah. I mean, I would say he was still... like I still thought about it. He was still my gold standard. Like I have a scar on my shoulder that I'm still like, oh, this scar is from when I tripped over Kenny's back foot when we were racing to the playground. Like he's definitely coveted in my heart and protected there as this like innocent little cute brown boy. But were there other crushes? Yes. I think after that, I became more curious in general about guys. There are several guys in my life, or who were in my life at that point, who I was interested kind of loosely in. I remember having like dreams about, and still as an adult, I have dreams where I have crushes on these guys. Like, it's kind of like the dream is I'm an adult, but I am like finally having a chance to kiss or get with some guy that I had some lifelong crush on starting in elementary school. I don't know if you've had those type of dreams. Like, I'm not sure. Yeah, like I don't know that I actually had a crush, but my subconscious is telling me that there was a crush in elementary school at least. But so my middle school years were weird because I went to 3 different middle schools in 3 years because I was bad. And so I got kicked out of schools or left schools. And so my first school was an all-girls school, and it was small, and I didn't have a crush on anybody there. My second school was like an alternative school, and that's where kind of the jock situation started because like I was one of the best people on the basketball team. And then I started like, I had a crush on like the best player on the male's basketball team. And we started kind of messing around on the back of the bus type of situation. And then I got kicked out of that school because I got into a fight and went to, for 8th grade, like a small Christian Baptist school. And there is when I really started to realize that me being a tomboy was going to be a problem with girls, because there were 2 guys who were interested in me. And it was back in the days of like a friend would ask you out for somebody else. And so how I understand it, my first like real boyfriend, this was my first boyfriend situation. I had a crush on this guy. What was his name? I don't remember his name even. And he was too shy. He liked me too, but he was too shy to ask me out. So he told his friend Roland to ask me out for him. Roland said, okay. But then Roland asked him out for himself. And I was like, oh, well, okay, I guess. So then I went out with Roland, and then like he became my boyfriend. And then I found out like after the fact that the first guy had told Roland to ask him out, and it became a thing amongst them. But anyways, both of these 2 guys were pretty popular with the girls, and it was a private school. I mentioned it was Baptist, so it was one of those schools where like you matriculate from elementary school to middle school together. So I'm coming in at 8th grade at the end of this like, 8-year-long friendship familiarity that all these kids have with each other. I'm this new girl, and 2 of the like, one of them was the class clown, the other one was like an athletic person. They were both like, I don't know, known. So and basically fighting over me. So all the other girls, we're not having it. So I got in a fight there too, and left eventually and went back to the all-girls school.
I understand that. I grew up in that kind of same thing where you're just together for so long, and when someone new enters the ecosystem, it's like, who the F are you? We don't know you. You have to really prove yourself. We had 2 middle schools that joined to only 1 high school, and like I remember I did not like the other kids from the other school. Like when they became friends with my friends that I grew up with, have spent these years with, I was like, these biatches gotta go. They got to go. I just was not okay with assimilating. I was like, no, I don't need them. I don't need those girls. But you mentioned that you learned to be more forward in what you wanted. But are there any other lessons you can think of that you might have taken from your crush on Kenny as the foundation of he's kind of in your Mount Rushmore of crushes? I always think like in our heads, we kind of have those 4 that stick out, or a few. And I think he's definitely one of yours. So any lessons other than be?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that was maybe one of the only, there are 2 times I think in my life that I have had a crush on someone and either it wasn't reciprocated or it couldn't work out or something, and I wound up hurt. And so I think for me, the thing about like letting my intentions be known is kind of like, I don't want to be hurt. And so I also would always be the one to like back out of the relationship or sabotage the relationship, or like I would like find somebody that I thought was cute or whatever, and then I would pursue them. And I would not stop until they were interested in me. Not healthy. I do not recommend this. It was a problem. It was a problem. But Kenny, and then my high school crush, who we were gonna do this episode on, but I thought that might be weird if my husband listened. Because he's still in my life. That my high school crush is still in my life in a loose way. My husband knows and everything and whatever. Anyways, I didn't want to do a whole episode talking about my high school crush because then I felt like that might be too romanticizing this person who's still in my life. So anyways, I think ultimately like those two situations are when I felt like a little bit of or actual heartbreak. And I'm not trying to be vulnerable like that for nobody. Till I met my husband. And then it was like, he's a Southern man, so very also forward. He was older in age. He's 7 years older than me. So I was 25, he was 32. So, I mean, now it doesn't sound like that's just regular age, but at the time it felt like old. He had been married and divorced and was, at the point in his life where he was starting to look for somebody to settle down with. So when he came around, he was very upfront with me, asked me out on a date, blah, 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 blah. And when I decided that, like, I actually did want to get to know him, I called him and I was like, hey, because we had gone to like a group friend dinner. And at that dinner, it was after our first date. At that dinner, we had sat down and we were enjoying the meal, but we didn't have a chance to talk to each other because there was like 12 other people there. So I wanted to call him after we left to say like, hey, sorry we didn't have a chance to talk. I am interested in getting to know you more. So let's go on another date. And so that's what I did. And he was like, oh, okay. I was going to give it another day, but okay.
Well, that's good. I wish I had that level of confidence. But I was going to say, like, you mentioned the dreams you have, like, these former crushes. And I think that's something we all do. Even if we won't admit it, we tend to wonder that what if situation. With that, what do you think your life would be like today if Kenny had never moved? Do you think you would have been one of those very rare elementary school crushes to go on and marry?
When I tell you that my life has taken so many twists and turns and that my personality, literally nobody the other part about my story is that I'm a recovering alcoholic. And so I've been sober now for 11 years.
Congratulations.
Thanks. But any person that I met before I got sober was not going to last through my addiction at all. So I'm almost glad, like, the people who knew me before then, like, y'all got the pure Whitney. And then there's the people in the middle that just got the crazy fucked up, like, I don't know what's happened to Whitney. And then there's the after sobriety, after getting sober, which is the calm, sure, confident mother, wife, Whitney.
So Kenny got the pure, just know the rest. But
yep.
So we're gonna leave Kenny in the past, but always remembered, you always will have the scar. We'll always have those elementary crushes, our first crushes that I think always are gonna be close to our hearts, no matter where we go in time or what we go through. So now that we talked about Kenny, it's time to dive more into you and what you have going on with Impostrix. I think it's a very interesting and necessary podcast that you kicked off last year in July, but being an attorney as well, a wife, a mom, what made you want to add a podcast to the plate?
So the podcast actually was my outlet. I, at the time, was doing civil rights law, which was my dream. I had gotten this position at this prestigious firm, nonprofit civil rights firm. And from the moment I graduated law school 7 years earlier, that was my dream job. And there became a point where my dream job turned into a nightmare. And to the point of affecting my mental health, anxiety, irritability. I was distracted from my family, just lots of things. It was difficult. Like, the job in itself is difficult. I was working in jails and prisons, advocating for people who were incarcerated. And that is hard and sad and difficult. But then also my work environment itself was really difficult for me and really toxic for me. So I got the idea of doing this podcast because I was listening to, first of all, I was not a podcast listener. I don't know why I was listening to this podcast, but I was listening to The Financial Feminist. Oh, I know why. Because my student loans had just been forgiven, and I was trying to figure out how to get my financial life in order, and was drawn to this name, Financial Feminist. And it was great. It was engaging. I learned a lot. And I was like, wait a second. Wait a one damn minute. I can do this. Like, I can have a podcast and talk about race, and talk about the patriarchy, and talk about capitalism, and what all of that has to do with work, and what all of that has to do with creating internalized self-doubt, which is this imposter syndrome. And so from there, I just ran with it. And that turned into Impostrix Podcast. I had no idea how much work it was going to be. I thought I was just sitting in front of a mic and pushing episodes out. I don't know how I managed. I guess my previous boss would say I did not manage, because I was spending maybe 20 to 30 hours a week on the podcast and working more than full time, and momming and all of that stuff. So so the show is called Impostrix Podcast. We validate professionals of color who navigate imposter syndrome narratives and racial toxicity in their careers. And I'm a believer that imposter syndrome is an external malady. It's something that we experience because of systems like white supremacy and patriarchy. It's this feeling that we're not good enough, even though we damn sure are. And I think for people of color like myself, I'm a Black woman, I experience it differently than white people because the society that we live in does not celebrate my being. And the spaces that I enter weren't meant for me. And so, this has really been a healing project for me, and it's been a creative outlet for me. It's given me a lot of courage to do things like quit my job. And it's been amazing.
Trying to see if I want to go with the Black woman route, as a Black woman myself, or the imposter syndrome. I'm gonna go the Black woman route first. Which is something like I went to college just to move. Everybody that listens to this knows that. Anyone that talks to me 5 minutes knows I had no plans. I just went to leave home. And so when I left college, I got to my senior year, graduated. I was like, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this degree in this most general of subjects, humanities. What is it? That should be illegal to give us a degree in something that's not real. But I had it, and then so I have a full file on my email of just rejections from jobs. I think I have the world record of it. I wish I had kept track since I graduated. I probably would have the world record. So I don't really know imposter syndrome yet because I haven't reached that level of success. But as a Black woman and having like a Spanish last name, because I'm also Spanish as well, mixed, I do think that we have the hardest Black women in the workforce. Would you say that's true? Even I think we have it harder than Black men in this world. Like Black women, I feel we are the least listened to, and you'll just throw our resumes aside. Would you say that's fact?
Yeah, absolutely. And we're recording this shortly after Claudine Gay resigned. Dr. Claudine Gay resigned from her position at Harvard. And we don't have to get into that necessarily, but I raised that because on social media, I've been seeing a lot, the quote from, was it Frederick Douglass? Someone has this quote that's essentially saying just that, like Black women are the least respected in our society. Dang it. See, I'm gonna have to find this quote while we're talking so that I can say it. But I do agree with that. I think that our role in society is complex, but society doesn't give us credit for managing all of it, particularly when it comes to being a partner or being a caregiver. We, as during the Reconstruction, after slavery, we became professional caregivers. We were already caregivers. And I think, that's a part of our role. What am I trying to say? So the other aspect, I think, of our culture, at least in my family, is that we are matriarchal. And even though Black men have this very real responsibility and pressure to provide for the family, it's the women who do everything. Mm-hmm. We run the house. We make sure that the money gets where it needs to go. We raise the children. We make the food. We make sure that if stuff is broken, it's getting fixed. And maybe that's telling our whoever's to fix it, or maybe that's actually going and getting the things fixed. We keep track of the health in the household. We have so many responsibilities, yet we are given the least amount of respect. Mm-hmm. And I think I was talking to one of my guests on the show who was saying that, like, our roles in the home place, in our personal lives, tend to follow us into our professional lives. So that's saying things like, if at home we are the home caretakers, if you will, we'll do the same in the office. So if there's a dishwasher in the office, it'll be a woman who is cleaning the dishes, putting the dishes in the dishwasher, or taking them out, instead of a man. If there is a meeting, it'll be the woman who's volunteering to be secretary instead of a man. Mm-hmm. If coffee needs to be made in the morning in the office, it'll be a woman who's doing the coffee. And not always, of course, not all the time. But I liked that comparison because I think it's the same as far as how we view women and men and how we view Black women. That whatever our views are, or however we treat them, whether we have implicit bias or whether we're just straight explicit about it, that follows us into the workplace.
Mm-hmm. Totally agree. It bothers me of just like, especially in podcasting, women already are like second class citizens in this platform, but as a Black woman, it's even harder to get your voice out. But back to the imposter syndrome, something, again, I don't really have experience with, as I haven't reached that level yet to feel imposterous in. But I do want to know, like, in your research and your work, have you found like any careers or industries that like people suffer the most with imposter syndrome?
Okay, so hold on. Before I go back to this, it was not Frederick Douglass. It was Malcolm X. I don't know why I said Frederick Douglass, because it makes sense that it's Malcolm X. But it's the most disrespected person in America is the Black woman. The most unprotected person in America is the Black woman, and the most neglected person in America is the Black woman. And I think that quote like sums it up as far as our Blackness and our womanness. But about imposter syndrome, so no, to answer your question in short, I don't know that there's like one field that has people who experience that more or less. But the background that I want to give about imposter phenomenon is that there were two white female psychologists who are still alive who were here in Atlanta when they were doing that study, but they did a study on their patients who were white, middle class, high achieving women. And they used the term high achieving, and they used it to mean people who were getting advanced degrees or who had already gotten advanced degrees, who were like top of their class in school, who had, professions that are kind of highly revered in this society. So lawyers, doctors, engineers. Who were very, very, very smart and very, very capable, but who felt like they weren't good enough, who felt like they were a fraud in their workplaces, but also in their school. Like if they were in school, if they were getting their PhD or something. And so I want to bring up that background because, one, this phenomenon was initially used to describe white women. Now, the study, I believe, did have some people of color, a few people of color, but it was predominantly white women. The other thing that I want to say is, because of our society, again, because of the external, because of Black women being the most disrespected, women being the most unprotected, that although imposter syndrome itself is really considered an internal malady, what I argue is that it's not at all, is that it's an external force. I think when we are anxious or nervous because we are doing something new, or because we are taking on an important task that maybe it's the first time, or we're learning something, I don't think that's imposter syndrome. I think that's just being nervous because it's the first time, and because we're learning something, and because we're doing something big. Imposter syndrome is when you feel as though you're a fraud, that whatever led to you being in that position was a mistake, that you've fooled somebody, and that really your capacity and your genius is much lower than everybody else thinks. And people who struggle with imposter syndrome feel that way even when there's objective evidence to the contrary. So even when I've gotten my diploma from high school, and then I've gone to college and graduated top of my class, and then I went to law school, and then I took the bar and I passed the bar, and then I got a job, and then I practiced law, if I'm still feeling like an imposter, like a fraud, that's just not true. I did literally everything that's required of me, and I still feel like I'm an imposter, but I feel like an imposter because I look around and nobody looks like me. Like, my feeling like an imposter is a feeling of I don't belong, because everything around me, everything that I'm internalizing is telling me that I don't belong. Not because I don't know, think that I don't, like it's because of all of this other stuff around me. It's because of the messages that I've internalized about my worth, about my value, about me being smart or not smart, about, my attitude, my tone, the way that I look, about my hair, about all the things. And so I read a book by Elizabeth Leiba called I'm Not Yelling, and it's about Black women in the workforce and how some of the things that we navigate. And she uses the term imposter treatment. I like that. And I began using the term imposter experiences. And what I mean when I say imposter experiences is that we are experiencing a feeling of being an imposter, but that experience is not internal. It's not rooted in me. It's rooted in the environment that I'm walking into.
Do you think that as we progress and more women of color in these higher positions, or just women in general, and we just get more diverse in these higher, lawyers, doctors, that future generations won't have these experiences?
I hope so. I think there's a lot of factors that come into play, because also what I'm learning in my podcast is that this is cultural, and that Black people from other countries, the Caribbean specifically, don't necessarily have this feeling of imposter. And not I shouldn't generalize, because it's not everyone, but in other cultures where maybe there's a Black majority, or maybe maternalism and matriarchy are more mainstream and more celebrated, the feeling of being less than because you're a Black, or because you're a Black woman, is less ingrained in our psyche. And so I've had conversations with people on the podcast who are like, look, Whitney, I don't know what you mean. I don't know what you're talking about with imposter syndrome. I'm from Jamaica. I grew up, they told me I can do whatever I want, and wherever I am is where I'm supposed to be. And that's how I move throughout this world. So I'll say that I think representation does matter. And I think the way that we are raising our children, our young girls, our Black kids, our Black boys, our trans folk, our, people of color, the way that we raise each other needs to be in a way that we envision us using the power that we inherently have and not shrinking. And so part of my goals with Impostrix Podcast is to help people feel the power that they have and to not shrink, to undo that. And we do that by sharing our experiences and calling it out as what it is, which is bullshit. Like, you think you're an imposter, you're not. Somebody's treating you like an imposter. Yeah, that happened to me too. And they wrong. We just have to keep doing. We can support each other. We can heal. We've got some healing to do around racial trauma. So I think it's complex, but yes, I do think that representation does matter. I don't think we end there, because representation without inclusion doesn't mean anything.
I mean, I can't say I'm not surprised that it might be like a U.S. cultural thing, because the U.S. has a lot of issues. We know that. But yeah, that's interesting. I never thought about the cultural aspect of, like, you go to Jamaica or you go to like an African country compared to here, because, even though you look around and you can see a lot of Black people, a lot of Hispanic people, we still are treated worse because we are not straight male Christian with money. So
yeah. And I mean, white supremacy obviously isn't limited to the United States. We live in a world full of white countries that colonized brown countries. And so it was really surprising to me to hear people say that they can't think of a time when they've experienced imposter syndrome, or that it's not something that's significant in their lives. Because I'm over here like, well, how do I get that? But again, what they told me was that, when you grow up in a place where your being Black isn't unique, then it's just not unique. Now, there might be other things. Maybe now it's colorism instead of just Blackness by itself. Maybe it's the shade of your skin. Classism. I know there are countries where they use the caste system, and your family wealth and generational wealth now becomes the race, basically America's version of race. So I think, there's other things at play, but I think that, when we're talking about imposter syndrome, for me, it helps to reframe imposter syndrome altogether, to acknowledge that it's not me, that my feelings of this specific type of self-doubt come from outside of me. And so how can I block that out and instead listen to my inherent genius and my inherent power?
It's a good way to go. But with all that said, what's to come on Impostrix as we get more into 2024? How are you helping people feel that they don't have to shrink and they can be out there? And it's just an experience.
Yeah, thank you. So I did quit my job last year. So I am starting a business. I don't know the name of it right now. It's just called W. Knox Lee, LLC. But I am getting into, I've been for several years now, a DEI consultant, diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant. And so I'm now going to be doing that full time in addition to the podcast and mediation, and specifically race and culture based conflict mediation within the workplace. So because one of the things that I've seen as I'm providing training and education on anti-racism and inclusion is that people need a little bit more support navigating conflicts and figuring out what to do next after I've done some teaching. And so the podcast will continue to be an accessible way for people to get information on things like anti-racism and inclusion for both people of color and white people. The podcast centers the voices of people of color, so we only have people of color on the show. And in 2024, we're going to have several mini-series that coincide with the different awareness months. Of course, Black History and Women's History, but also Second Chance Month, which is celebrating people that are returning from incarceration to start their careers. So we're going to be having people on to talk about what it's like dealing with career and imposter syndrome after serving time in prison. We're also going to be talking about substance abuse and recovery and career, and mental health and career. We are going to have mini-series on BIPOC entrepreneurship. And then we're going to end season 3. So next fall, we're going to end with general employment law topics like disability and the ADA. And what do we do when we need to take leave because of a mental health or a physical health issue?
Very cool. Very cool. The prison one. What month is the prison? The second
April.
Chance. Oh, the top. My brother is he just got out after quite a while, and he's slowly building his life back up, and it's really cool to see him actually, like, at almost 50 start to take it, like, this is he doesn't want to go back this time. So it's been really cool to see him, like, finally turn it around. So I'll let him know in April. That's his month.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. We're gonna have actually after this, I'm recording with a gentleman. I've people who have spent 25 years in prison. After admitting to a crime or not, I'm also going to be interviewing somebody who spent 10 years in prison but then got exonerated. And rebuilding their lives and their careers and setting themselves up and dealing with, people in the workplace who are using language that's dehumanizing, like criminal, like felon, like convict, language that I don't use, inmate. And so it's going to be interesting.
Looking forward to it. But before we go, can you remind people where they can find you and Impostrix online?
Yes. So I am on social media, but you can find all of that information, all of my handles, the events that I have coming up, workshops, etc. at www.impostrixpodcast.com.
Right, Whitney. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me about your elementary school crush and so much more important things in life. And everyone can find all that information below. And until next time, as always, keep crushing it. Crushgasm is part of the I Did Not Make These Rankings podcast network, alongside some other pretty cool shows, including An Evening at the Movies, Crime, Rewind, Literature Reapers, Love is Black, Masturbators, Men Are the Prize, and The Sip List. You can find all of us and more over at idnmtrpodcastnetwork.com.